Planned out for you. I made a game, Now What? A panel on business and self-publishing in the game industry. I'm Heather Decker-Davis, and I will be moderating. I'd just like to take a moment to politely remind you that it may be a good idea to silence your phones or devices right about now. To get things started, I'd like to give our panelists each a moment to introduce themselves. George, take it away.
Hi, everybody. I'm George Hufnagl. Already. My name is George Hufnagl. I'm the producer and sound designer for an indie dev group called My Escape. We are primarily virtual, in that I'm the only one in Chicago. I have 3 other teammates, one in Canada, one in Scotland, and one in England. We've had people from China and Australia as well. But depending upon what we need for the game, that's kind of how we operate. So, thank you.
Hi, my name is Craig Stern. I am the founder and president and sole game developer. I'm just the guy, if you will, behind Sinister Design. It's a small, like one-person indie game development studio here in Chicago. I make strategy games and RPGs primarily, but sometimes also like platforms or something. I'm also on the board of Indie City Games, which is an independent game developer meetup here in the city, where you can come and share all of your great indie stuff if you're an indie develop games. And I also have a blog called IndieRPGs.com, where I talk about indie RPGs. Good times.
Woo! I am Kyle Hanson. I am a patent attorney. Greg was telling me earlier that he's actually an attorney in his other life, but that's not why he's here. That's the only reason why I'm here. I was a developer before I went to the dark side of law, I suppose. But I have I've represented other clients where you're actually taking your idea and actually making a business out of it. And there are all sorts of details that I could bore you with, but the gist of it is, I have a game idea, I have code, I have a clever name, I have, there are a bunch of things in the IP realm, in the intellectual property realm that you want to protect, as well as, basic, how do I set up a corporation, how do I set up my actual business, and how do I actually negotiate the contracts with somebody. The real nuts and bolts of, I actually want to do this, I actually want this to work at a very practical level, and that's why I'm here.
My name is Geisler. I recently graduated from DePaul University a year ago. I'm currently a developer at Young Horses, which is a startup studio working on a commercial version of Octodad, which was one of the IGF Student Showcase winners last year.
I'm John Murphy. I also am at Young Horses working on Octodad, whereas Kevin, does sort of like the day-to-day managing of sort of the operations, and then does programming and things like that. I do sort of like the business end of things and other producery duties and design and whatever else needs to get done.
I'm Jay Margalus. I work for a studio called Lunar. Has anybody here heard of Lunar? Yes! Some people have heard of Lunar. So we have a game called Delve Deeper on Steam. It's pretty cool. You should check it out. And so we have 4 guys working for our studio. And so as just with about every other independent studio here, everybody does about 5 different things, right? So, I develop websites, I do business development, all that kind of stuff. So that's me in a nutshell. And I am a spaceman.
All right, so let's kick things off. Say, I made this great game. Now what do I do? Should I self-publish? What do you guys think?
Yeah. Well, I can say something here because Heather sent out the questions today and I responded to her. It was originally questioned, why should I self-publish?
And so my input was, well, should you, first of all, because as you know, there are hundreds of thousands of games out there, and there are thousands coming out every week. So the question of whether you should self-publish is really a difficult one to wrestle with. I should say that I'm representing my team's responses to some of these questions as well, so I can't take credit for everything I give you, but at least we hope that we give you our kind of input. But basically, I think what you should ask is, what is it that you're making? Who do you want to go to? And how much is your budget to work with that? Really, my wife is actually search engine marketing. She works with a client who has hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars doing search engine marketing. And that is to get ads in front of you in Google, Gmail, MSN, etc. And so you're going against those same territories. So the idea of whether you should self-publish starts there. But if you have something really unique that might not fit in a traditional channel, but you have good connections or know how to get those connections, then I think that might be an appropriate channel to start going through self-publishing.
The way I kind of look at it is publishing through like a publisher is about mitigating risk, right? If you self-publish, you take on the onus of making sure your game is successful. You've got to do all the marketing. You've got to get all the funding yourself. And, of course, then you have total creative freedom, and you can reap all the rewards, minus maybe like, Steve's cut, you sell it on Steam, but you don't get into that. But you get all the income. On the other hand, if it fails, you're kind of SOL. If you have a publisher, maybe they're going to be making most of the income from your game based on, what kind of agreement you have with them. And that's reducing a lot of the risk of a failure, right? They're going to pay to keep your studio running all throughout development. But, it's kind of a risk-reward balance, I would say. And also, to some degree, like how much creative freedom you want when you're working on the game.
I think a lot of it is about realizing what your actual talents are. If you're one to really just want to develop the game and work solely on that, I think working with other people to publish the game is going to benefit you in the long run. Just because they're going to be able to offer a lot of the things you're not able to. Because I know a lot of developers end up making a pretty good game, but then they put it out there and they can't really reach the kind of audience they want to just because they may not be that great at communicating, or they may not be able to really find the audience that the game is for. So it's definitely about seeing what kind of talent your team has and whether you can actually take on publishing by yourself.
I think, what Craig was saying too is interesting because, with taking the risk on as a developer, I don't want to, continue to talk about this. We were talking about this beforehand, but you can do things with Kickstarter now where it mitigates a lot of that risk by having, some cash up front, right? You guys had a really successful program for your next game, and I'm sure you're a little bit happier now than you were beforehand, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Being modest, it was a really successful, Kickstarter project. So, should I self-publish? Yeah, you should self-publish, though. Right? I think how many people are students here as well, right? So even if you want to go on later to work at a larger studio, they're always going to look for something that you've done. So even if you make one game and you self-publish it and you do everything, and it doesn't turn out to work, you've got something to put in your portfolio and go to the next game studio with, and tell them, hey, look what I've done. Right? So.
Yeah, and I think part of it is kind of what's your end game. If it's to get a job, maybe at a fully funded studio owned by a publisher, then yeah, that's a great thing. And I think part of what the questions we have, we might address this later, but for our team, we have kind of a long-term goal, which is to be self-sustaining and ideally working full-time on whatever terms that means for us. So to get there, though, is a very big leap. So we have to raise a significant amount of money to make the games that we ideally want to, and then market it ourselves. But to do that, you have to build a community who knows who you are, who can support you long-term, who are interested in your products, I say products in loosest terms, it's not, so I don't mean in terms of marketing products, but essentially you need people to engage with you, and to get to that audience it can be very difficult. Things like Kickstarter do totally help, because people taking the interest in what you're doing, they get a direct connection to you through the rewards that you have based on the different levels of donation. And so those are great things. But for things that are, say, we tend to work on smaller projects right now because that's what's feasible for our group and what can help us kind of build that following. So I think part of it is, what's the size of your game? How much time are you investing into it? How important is it that you make all the money that you invested back? Or how important is it that you retain creative control of that? I think talking about those elements of it will help answer those questions for you at the end of yeah.
So I have a question. I kind of know the answer to this, but I want to hear it from your mouth. What is self-publishing as opposed to publishing, getting a publisher? Like, what are the differences?
For me, when I say publishing, I mean that you work directly with a publisher, say a third-party publisher, as opposed to distribution, which is kind of what Steam is for. So I guess what I'm talking about is working with a third party to help either in any of the models. There's so many different models of publishing nowadays. Market your game, fund you up front, fund you on the back end, those kinds of things. That's what I traditionally understand as being publishing versus.
We'll definitely open up for more questions at the end too. Now, related to self-publishing also, what are some of the most effective ways to sell your game online right now? I know we've said Kickstarter. Are there any other avenues that you guys have hit recently that have been great?
Anybody else on Steam yet?
I hear Steam's pretty great.
They're fantastic for independent developers. So you have to build a name for yourself first to get on Steam. So, like with Lunar Giant, we started out on Impulse and Gamersgate. Are you guys familiar with those? Okay, so they're smaller platforms. One of them is actually, I think, mostly European market. So we went to Steam the first time and we said, hey, we got this awesome game, take it. And they said, no. And so then we went out to a lot of the independent game review blogs and things like that. And we got on Gamersgate and Impulse. And we built up our own press for ourselves. And then Steam said, hey, we noticed you've been getting all this attention. Would you like to be on Steam? And so that's, Steam's an excellent platform for independent developers. I know the guy who made Cthulhu Saves the World and Breath of Death just switched over from Xbox Live Indie Games to Steam, and he's, I don't know if he's rich or anything now, but he's definitely made a significant amount more on Steam than he did on Xbox Live Indie Games. So I don't work for Valve, but I think they do, they've done a good job for us. So I would say Steam is a great place to publish. I've got a PC.
So this isn't really like a place to sell games online, but like an effective method, or at least what we're hoping will eventually be an effective method of selling games online, is to first give something away. Like the reason that people have played Octodad and like gave us money on our Kickstarter is that they were able to play like a sort of proof of concept version of the game for free.
Lost leader, right?
Well, that makes sense. Now, switching gears a little bit, starting your own business, are there some fundamental ways that starting a game studio differs from starting a typical sort of business? I take that as a yes.
Yeah. Does anybody else?
How?
So I run two companies and co-own two companies, and one of them I basically do by myself, and the other one is the video game company, and we do it with 4 guys. So and this isn't from a structure standpoint necessarily, but it's just from a standpoint of figuring out how to work with 4 other people versus starting a studio or starting a company where you have all the controls. I don't know if that necessarily speaks to this question. What do you guys think?
I've not formed another business, so I don't know other reference.
I think a big thing to think about is
comparing software just very broadly to other areas of business where you have, I mean, even if you go from software to hardware, the guys who started Dell started by borrowing the money to fix one computer, fixing that computer, using that money to fix 2 computers, using that money to fix 4 computers, and it, scaled from there. You can't really do that with software because you have to make the game, and there are ways that you can kind of make it easier where you make the first bit of it and you give that away for free, and then you see if there's interest. And there's a way to kind of get around that fundamental problem, but that is a fundamental problem. You have a very high initial cost to making the game, and then after that, it's almost too easy. It's download, right? So there's almost no cost in distribution, but there's a very high cost, and it's very difficult to find other people who actually want to buy it, actually want to download it, let alone buy it. So in that way, it's probably that's probably a very fundamental way that it's different than starting a different business.
So the different companies that are up there, do you have LLCs? Do you have Type C corporations? What is the business setup that you've got?
I was worried someone might ask. The answer that I was discussing with Craig earlier was you shouldn't be worried about that. I was in a business incubator up in Madison, Wisconsin, and at the end of a incubator, there was somebody who was so stressed out about whether they were going to be an S corp or a C corp that they forgot what their actual business was. And frankly, that's why you have people like lawyers, so you don't have to worry about it. But also, largely speaking, there's just kind of a right answer. This is the type of business that you want to do, therefore, this is how you should make it. So I could describe it to you, but frankly, you wouldn't really understand it, even if I was very good at explaining it. And to be very good at explaining it, I would take much more time away from what the other panelists would have to say about more of the nuts and bolts of development and dropping the steam, the impulse, places where you can actually go to do it. So in terms of the short answer to the question, and frankly what you probably need to know is talk to some guy like me, and I will give you, and I will tell you this is the simple way to do it. There are a handful of reasons why you should. The biggest one being if your game winds up infringing someone else's intellectual property, or turns out that you're actually stealing someone else's name, or if you're doing something illegal, probably on accident, then you probably want to have an LLC or a corporation or something like that to make sure that the people don't come after your house.
So if you know that you're accidentally stealing
there's the problem. You don't know whether you're doing it before it happens. So that's why you talk to some guy, and frankly, you leave the problems like someone trying to scare you essentially into buying insurance or risk management or something like that. Know that there's a risk. Understand that. Do what you can to go to the right people, and then move on with how am I going to sell this? How am I going to make this?
So speaking of that, risks and so forth, what are some common pitfalls that you'd say you need to look out for when you're starting your own studio? Anything in particular you guys have run into? Unexpected expenses, just things you didn't plan for.
Yeah. There are tons of pitfalls. I'm not trying to trick you, but I'm just speaking from lessons learned. From a management standpoint, I'd say have goals set for why you're making this group. Meaning, what are our long-term goals? What are our short-term goals? We want to make a game. What game is it? How long are we going to take to do it? How many people do we need to do it? Those kinds of management things. Trying to find the right organization. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to get along with everybody well and to know that up front. Our group has had a high attrition rate. Part of that is due to us being virtual because we can get away with a little bit more. I'm not there to hound them as much in person. But that self-responsibility and ownership of your work and ability for everybody to come to an agreement on things is so key. So, Jay can probably talk about his team a little bit, as well. You run by yourself, so I think, but your partnerships and sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, I use a lot of contractors, and it's interesting what you say about it being important that, like, you can work well with people. I mean, obviously, the people you work with, you need to have a good working relationship with them. But something I would add to that is you cannot rely on that. And what I mean by that is no matter how well you get along with your team, no matter how good your relationship is, things need to be set forth in writing with specificity, preferably in a contract, so that everyone is on the same page as far as what needs to be done, when it needs to be done, what are the procedures for getting it done, what happens if it doesn't get done. Because no matter how much you guys like each other, there are bound to be misunderstandings. And if you have something you can come back to and you can both be like, oh, this is what we wrote, okay, this is how we're going to do it, it will preemptively solve so many problems that you don't even realize could possibly come up.
Very good points. Did you have anything, Jay?
Common pitfalls. There are a lot of things you need to worry about.
Oh, well, yeah.
Starting up your
Of
own
course.
studio. Gosh, and I think this kind of speaks to the previous question, and I was looking down the questions to make sure I wasn't cutting in or anything like that, but we were talking about starting up your own business or whatever. And this isn't a pitfall that I've run into, but I understand that a lot of studios work with vested shares now, which I think Kyle might be able to speak to more than I can. But vested shares are essentially, you have regular shares that can be given out. I don't know exactly what they're called, really. When you're starting up your own business, and those are just given to, and you normally give those in return for work at the outset of the start of the company, right? So if you've got a designer, you give them 25% of the company or something like that, right? But vested shares, what happens with those shares is they keep them basically indefinitely. But what vested shares do is like, a good example would be, what's his name? Tim, who took over Apple just recently?
Tim Cook?
Yeah, Tim Cook. He has vested shares. And what vested shares do is I think he, over the course of the next 10 years or 20 years or something like that, at the end of 5 years, he gets more shares. And at the end of 10 years, he gets another big chunk of shares. And I think what I've heard from a lot of other independent studios, that it's been a pitfall when they've given out just standard shares, is that now somebody owns a piece of my company, and like, for instance, if I'm a team member from George's company who I know, and I no longer work for My Escape, I still own shares in your company, but I'm not doing anything anymore, right? So vested shares ensure that those people continue to work for you 5, 10 years down the line, and they own a piece of your company. That's it.
Yeah, the word vested comes from the theory that you're vesting over a period of time. So the important part is, I'm going to hire you, and I'm going to hire you to develop something for me. And yours, I say, well, when that gets done, you're probably going to be worth probably a fourth of the company. It's going to be a really big deal. I'm going to be doing this part. I already made half the game, and you're going to make the other half, and I'm going to be doing the marketing or whatever. But I don't know how that's actually going to work out. So what I do is I say, all right, I will give you 25% of the company, but it won't actually happen until a year from now. And if it turns out that I hate your guts, or you want to quit, or you want to do something else, or if any number of things happening where we're no longer working together, then turns out you didn't get any vested rights in the company. You don't actually get any stock. You don't actually get any of the ownership or control of the business. And that happens a lot in all sorts of startup companies. Think of it this way: if I come up with an idea, I have 100% of the stock. And if I want to hire someone, then I can kind of say, all right, if you work on this long enough, I can give you some shares in the company if you're around for, but I'll give you a vesting schedule. You'll get some now, and you'll get some in a year, and you'll get some in 2 years or 6 months or whatever whatever the schedule is. And with software, it's usually pretty quick.
No.
But that's what that's going with. But if you have, and just to finish the thought, if you have 2 partners, then each of them usually has 50%. Usually, unless, say, one's in school and one is working for the business full time, then maybe you'll switch it up. But that's just a part of the discussion of how you set up the company.
So I have my company. What are some good ways for a newly started studio to really build its reputation? I know you guys talked about giving stuff away. If you want to elaborate on that, or are there any other really key ways you can build your reputation?
Develop relationships with journalists, preferably good ones.
Not necessarily. Is that
I mean, let's put it this way. You don't want to build your reputation by being the next Adam Coates. Does anyone here know who I'm talking about? The guy who made Flytrap, went on Gama Sutra, totally bashed Derek Hughes' games Spelunky, and incurred the wrath of like everyone in the universe. Yeah, don't do that. What you want to do is send emails to journalists from various game blogs that you like. You don't even necessarily have to pitch your game to them from the outset. You can be like, hey, I really liked that piece you wrote on procedurally generated relationship sims. The more like personal relationships you have with journalists, the better, because then when you're like, hey, guess what, I have this game, they will feel a little more warm and fuzzy, and you won't just be another faceless PR company flinging press kits at them.
Yeah, and to add to that, the same thing goes in the forums. Spend time in the forums discussing topics, contributing to questions, getting to know the communities a little better. Things like Game Dev, Indie Gamer, TIG forums. I know Jay's a big fan of that one. Touch Arcade if you're into mobile. Those are great resources, not only to get tools or things like that, but really build beyond just the PR thing. Oh, I have a game. Nobody would care if you're never there. Who are you? You're just kind of part of the spam thing. Same thing on Twitter. Work with a lot of people on Twitter. Just say things to people, follow people. They have a cool article, like you said, respond to it. Or they say something funny. Say that's funny. That's good. But I think my programmer, she does her Twitter account, and I have her physically good because she's totally wired into being online all the time. So for her to comment things on Twitter is very natural for her. So do things that are both natural to you, but will also help get people to just notice you as a person, to be a human being on the internet.
Yeah, but if I can contribute something into that, be careful what you say, right? You're speaking for your company, right? You're kind of, I think you kind of get used to speaking some way amongst friends. You think, oh, I'm on Facebook, I can say this, or I'm on Twitter. You are now the face of your company. You are the image of your company. People have long memories, right? Especially if you're on some bulletin board where you feel nice and safe and comfortable, and you can just rag on something mercilessly, and somebody else is. Once you're the voice of your company, be real careful.
Good
real
advice.
Important to maintain that positive look, positive spin, positive image.
Google yourself once in a while.
Yeah.
And Google your company as well. Because if I Google my name, I can see it associated now because of blog posts I've done. And so you can kind of look through that and see, oh, well, I didn't know I was so angry that day.
Yeah.
What's the competition that you guys are part of? Kind of part of IGDA, right? What's it? No. Are you guys doing? Are you entering any competitions or award things with your games right now?
They
There's
were
one that we're not
IGDA.
supposed to talk about yet.
Oh, okay. Never mind that one.
Listen, we entered IndieCade and we found out yesterday that we didn't get in, but we're still going to go because going to those things is definitely like a huge way to like become a part of this community of supportive people. It's definitely another way to get out there.
Definitely. So we have our company and we're making some money now and we have a name. So how do you incorporate profit sharing amongst the developers and any contributing parties?
I would do exactly what Craig said in the beginning, which is have some sort of agreement and preferably have it in writing, just so that when you're talking, it's very common to say, well that counts as we're sharing everything 50-50, but what exactly are you sharing? For example, I'm doing such and such, and my partner helped a little bit. Does that mean that his little addition means that we're sharing my side project 50-50? That doesn't seem fair, but do you have anything that says that? And it's not from a legal somebody's going to sue somebody sort of way. It's in a very personal, let's just make sure we understand what's happening before we jump into it. So if you want to develop a game with someone and you say you're the developer and you're the business person and you want to come together, you want to come up with whatever it is that makes both of you happy with the relationship. And you need to, and I have seen it go from 50-50 to very heavily skewed from one person to another, depending on how much time they think they'll put into it. You can do it straight percentage of profits as opposed to, some people actually track their hours and essentially compare it to somebody. You can do that. You can have faux rates in terms of, I think my time is worth 110% of what your time is worth based on experience or something. There are many ways of doing it. But the gist of it is you want to come up with whatever makes you happy with your partners before you start making money, because that's how the fights start.
If I can add just one thing, people don't like to come up with contracts up front because it's awkward. Because you sit and talk about all these things that seem, at the time,
That'll never happen.
it's so insignificant. Do we really have to lay out every single... Yes, you do, because, while it seems insignificant now, and it seems awkward to do now, it is very, very small in the awkward scale compared to how awkward it's going to be when it actually does become a big deal later on.
All right, so if we look around games right now, we've clearly moved away from just the box titles being it. What kinds of business models do players seem most receptive to right now?
Free stuff.
Right.
Yeah, well, speaking of Valve, Dave Lowell is doing Dota 2, right? Dota? I'm sorry.
Yeah, Valve's doing Dota 2.
Yeah, and so he came out yesterday saying that their model for that is to make the game as cool as possible, and then they're going to worry about monetization after the fact. Now, the fact that Valve has the money to do that is great, but I saw a comment on the blog, which is disturbing, and it said, if he does anything other than the free things, I'm not playing this game. And so you're thinking, if Valve can't wield the power to get people to invest in the game, what hope do we have? But the free-to-play model is totally dominating, especially in mobile, because of the requirements of investment and time for mobile games. You'll find it's hard to get monolith purchases, I think is what some people call it, where you buy everything up front. It's a more risky investment with this name because you're spending so much time up front as opposed to investing in an infrastructure and then doing the long tail effect where you send out updates and people are informed of what's going on, like an MMO style, but like a much smaller style. But I definitely see the free model as kind of the dominating thing that most of things are talking about.
Yeah. But just to be clear, you're talking about multiplayer right now.
In terms of the free to play?
Yeah.
Well, you can go on all kinds of Flash games, that are free to play. I think that's kind of where they start, at least smaller. Even $1 purchases, even that is still that's skewing the market away from the $20, $30, $40, $50 purchases of AAA games.
I see a lot of games going towards freemium. I personally think people should pay for my games. I'm a believer of making something and having people pay for it. One of the largest tech companies in Chicago, 37 Signals, right? Their big thing is they don't give things away for free. They made a product, and now you should pay for it. So I personally believe any product we make in the future, people will have to pay for it. The one thing I can say that we're starting to move over towards a little bit is DLC, which is also a really popular thing, right? It's a great way, once you put out a product, to extend the product's life, make a little bit extra money off of the DLC. And another thing I learned, we just released our first DLC pack for Delve Deeper, is that you don't necessarily always make we had a huge spike in profits when the DLC came out. But it wasn't from people buying the DLC. It was because it put Delve Deeper on the front page of Steam. And people went and they bought Delve Deeper because now we were on the front page and people saw us there. And so they were going and buying our other game for full price and then buying the DLC as well. So I personally think DLC is an excellent way and a model that a lot of people are following for extending the life of a game that they've already created.
I don't know what DLC.
Oh, I'm sorry, downloadable content.
Oh.
So a DLC could be anything from like a map pack, relics, all sorts of different things. Sorry, I didn't.
Hats. And I don't even mean like in-game hats. I just mean hats.
Right.
Sell hats.
Costumes, cosmetic things.
If you can like somehow convert your game design studio into a haberdasher.
But Gabe Newell, right, the guy who runs, he just came out and said, freemium is the way that Steam is headed pretty much. So they've got Team Fortress 2, which is free now, and you just buy hats. Whatever else you buy.
Screen bending.
More in terms of definitions, premium is any model where you give out something for free or the base package for free, and then you can upgrade to the premium something.
Right.
Anything. So it could be. I see DLC kind of as a hybrid of that, but DLC can kind of be on the top of even a paying product. You get that for Xbox games all the time. But freemium is a specific model where you have it's usually more than a teaser in terms of this is actually something. It's not just the trial version. It's actually something substantial, and then you give even more. And sometimes that doesn't work for everything, but apparently it definitely does for if you can make it work with your game concept.
How many people here use AVG antivirus?
Right here.
So you know how like when you download it and you install it, it's free, but it comes up with this little splash screen that's like, here's the free version, and it protects you, you get basic protection. And here's the premium version, and here's like 15 million other things that it does that you don't get it if you get the free version. That's basically it. That's a freemium product.
Very much so.
Some people do, Some people do where it's like you can purchase cheats in some sense. So like you can invest the time to get the awesome thing, but if you want to just pay $5 now, we'll just give it to you. You can skip 5 levels. I mean, that's kind of a cheap design trick, and I think people are starting to detect the BS in that a little bit more. So it's kind of pervasive at some point. But yeah, I mean, Mochi has Mochi Coins, which is their way you can directly input your API with Mochi. AZAP is another model that a lot of Flash games that do as well. It comes in almost all forms of games now, where you can do the freemium model.
Oh, before I don't want to, but there's at least one person here from Cat Me Games, and I'm sure they'd appreciate it. They're a Chicago-based company, and their business model is like seamless advertising, right? So like you're playing your game and you get a power up that's brought to you by Head-On, apply directly to the forehead. Whoever does advertising for those sorts of things, right? So that's another business model that I think is actually an interesting thing that people are starting to move forward with.
Definitely. Now, speaking of advertising, how can developers advertise if they don't necessarily have strong connections or a strong network? What are some good methods?
I think you're pretty much going to have to find people who can. Usually have a pretty good network. Just knowing your friends, if you give it in the game to play, they'll show it off at work, and their work buddies will end up showing it off. So passing around at least to your friends and actually getting them involved with your game development is at least one way to help kind of spread it out. One thing with Octodad that was really nice was even after we got a lot of press just from our game being different, we were able to really kind of keep up the momentum by just kind of talking with the gamers, getting them to post on their forums as kind of this network that pretty much snowballs into kind of becoming like a household name for a game in the indie scene.
Let's Play. Oh yeah. Also, I mean, YouTube, like, first of all, the trailer for the game was something that people thought was cool and funny, so they shared that around a lot. And then people just kept been doing all these YouTube videos of just them playing through the game and talking about the game while playing it. Like, one of those that, like, this thing just popped up, like, a couple of months ago, and it has, like 750,000 views. It's like, what?
By comparison, our own trailer hasn't hit 300,000 yet. It does it pretty much a week, so definitely getting it out to other people who have their own networks is a pretty good way to advertise.
Everybody here runs a blog, right? Blogs are fantastic. There are companies out there that do like weekly updates and builds of their games, and they show off what, their artwork or their newest thing in their game, and that's a great way to get advertising. What's that bunny game? The
Lunar?
Yeah, Lunar. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, right. It's the new iteration of Lunar, which is overthrow. Right? Overgrowth. Okay. Right. So that's another interesting way. Two free press networks, Games Press and Blues News. If you write up a press release and you send it to them, they will publish it. And Gama Sutra picks up on that. A couple other places pick up on that. I actually made a nifty handout with links that I've got to all the different things that I go to when I do press. I actually did it in Comic Sans as a joke. So bundles, right? We were in a bundle a couple of months ago with some companies that probably weren't even really that big, and that got picked up on Ars Technica. So there are these guys who have barely anybody's bought their game, and all of a sudden they're on Ars Technica because they're in a bundle. That's like a big thing right now, the whole indie bundle, that kind of stuff. So.
Very good. Now, what kind of web presence overall do you think developers need?
Well, we have kind of two methods we have set in place. So I'm the producer, so I kind of oversee pretty much everything. It can be overwhelming, but so in addition to the social networking things we have, we're on LinkedIn as a company. I'm on LinkedIn as a company. I meet a lot of people through there. I've gotten some really good connections just by talking to people on there. Twitter, Facebook page, YouTube stuff. Great. I think having a schedule of prolonged press kind of things. My designer is a fantastically sarcastic English person, and he rants about stuff constantly. But he's very humorous when he does it. And so I've encouraged him to do a weekly blog called Grit for Brit, who will pick a topic and just kind of go off on it without being overly negative. It just kind of takes his own spin on it. So we have that every Wednesday. This coming Thursday, so we're going to have a webcomic that our artist is going to do. Right now we're doing a contest to name that webcomic based on our virtual presence, which is kind of funny. We get a lot of funny stories coming out of that interaction. So they get to find things that are unique about your group and really work those things because everybody has their own spin. Sorry, Craig, go ahead.
Yes, no, just to build on what you were just saying, something else you can do, and depending on if this is something you like or have an interest in, is write articles about game design. If you do a good job, they will almost certainly get picked up. And even if you don't, sometimes they'll get picked up. Like, I think I've been in the rock, paper, shotgun Sunday papers 5 times now with game development articles I've written, and every single time I get a big surge of traffic from their website. It's a good way to get people to visit your site, even if they're technically going to go and read the article. If your article is interesting to them and it displays, I guess, a mastery, or at least a knowledge of game design, people will be like, I wonder what kind of games this person has actually made, and they'll probably go download your demo. Just something worth thinking about.
Yeah, if there were a short answer to the question, it's as big a footprint as possible. If the more different places you're in, the more different links you have, well, frankly, the more different links that you have pointing to you, the better off you'll be.
Very good.
Reddit. I'm surprised nobody said Reddit. Reddit's gigantic. We post stuff on either /indie games or /games or /game-picks or whatever. And if people start upvoting that, you'll get like thousands of votes or thousands of hits just from Reddit.
I didn't say that because that's like the one thing that has not worked for us.
Really?
But we just have bad luck with it for some reason.
You guys should start doing comics too, right?
Yeah.
You should totally post those on Reddit. I will upvote. I'm gonna my posse.
That's another good point. Help each other out. One idea we're toying with is partnering with similar developers who do games similar to us, and doing like this month we're featuring our friend so and so. And they have this cool game. And then when you go to their website, it's vice versa. So that you don't get mutual kind of traffic hits for certain things, and you're not sort of blatantly doing PR stuff. And it shows, it's kind of, you want to build that community as well. It's another way to develop relationships, get yourself some development cred with your friends, stuff like that. But I think, thinking of ways to just do promotion without any money involved is very helpful in the long term.
We started doing this blog series where we profiled. Are you guys familiar with the Michael Rose? He runs this website called indiegames.com, right? And he put this book out called 250 Indie Games You Must Buy. And so we started doing this blog series called it's something like 250 indie games reviewers that you must buy off or pay off or something like that, right? And so we profiled like one reviewer a week. And then that reviewer goes, oh, man, I'm featured on Lunar Giant's blog, and then they broadcast it to their network. And then, so if you're an indie game company, you have all this space to do things that large companies can't do. And I would, aside from what everybody's saying up here, you can think of like 20 other different things you can do to get your own company and establish its web presence out there that we haven't even thought of or set.
I think it's important that when you're working on your web presence that you don't just kind of spam everywhere and forget about it, especially if you have a blog or a forum or something and you're only updating it like once a year. That ends up being more of a burden than actually helping. So at least limit it to what you're capable of, or find someone who can actually help manage it.
Definitely. All right, so inevitably with games, we always have bugs. So you guys, what are some of your preferred tools for bug tracking? Keeping our products nice.
For Octodad, we're using an open source software called Mantis, which has been pretty nice for just posting simple bugs and uploading screenshots and sending emails out to the team and keeping track of what's going on. As far as finding the bugs, we try to do play test or play the game ourselves, but I think one thing that maybe not a lot of developers do is, well, in Octodad's case, we have a couple hundred playthrough videos of the original, and that helps us immensely in actually finding out what was a problem with the original game. Like, oh, this collision volume needs to be fixed, or the camera really back here. So having people play, especially the YouTube play testers, are really great just because they tell you exactly what you're thinking while they're playing the game. And they record it. It's really hard to get members of your team to do that. And they're doing it for free. So definitely finding the game and being played on YouTube is pretty big.
Awesome.
We have forums, that people post to and, say something about the game or whatever. And then, I don't know if you guys use repositories like SVN or Git, that you can check your code in there or whatever. But we use GitHub, and it's got like a wiki that you can add all your bugs to and bug fix it, and everybody can see them and check things off as they go along.
All right. So it never ends just after you ship the game anymore, right? So how much work would you say goes into supporting a game after the launch?
It's the most important part, right?
Where it begins.
Nobody's going to buy your game if you've released the game out in the wild and then you're not supporting it, because if it's out on Steam, Steam gives you your own forum, right? And if people are complaining on there and nobody's responding to it, and nobody's supporting the game, nobody's going to buy your game because they know they're getting a product that the developer isn't paying attention to anymore. I know, and George, you're doing iOS games and things like that now, and I know, from what I understand, releasing a game on like iPhone or anything like that, you've got to like constantly update it.
Well, the story of Doodle Jump is interesting because that's exactly what they did, and they said was their long-term model. That's why it's remained in the top 50, top 100 apps, paid apps for 2 years now. And they also got a bump from the Jonas Brothers at one point, but we have no control of that. So, yeah, I mean, we haven't yet launched the game, and we have nicknames for smaller games. We call them throwaway titles, and we don't mean that in terms of the development itself, but meaning we get it done, we learn from it, we distribute it through a licensor, watch what people say about the game. I kind of shield my other members from the negativity because people are super fickle online. Even on iPhone games, people are super fickle. And then collect that information. And then we take that information to the next project. Because these are such small titles, in the end, it's not worth us to support them. But as I was saying, we kind of are building this momentum long term to larger titles. And so a lot of these smaller games are litmus tests for us to see if the mechanic works well, if it's easy to play, are we getting the reaction we thought we would outside of that. And we're getting thousands of people playing these games, which is really nice. And in some cases, a very honest experience to see what people say. This is boring, this sucks, this is hard, I don't get it. And we were saying the directions are right there. Like the text is on the first page, that kind of stuff. So you can learn a lot by doing that.
If you have a unique enough name for your game, you can actually set up Google Alerts to email you anytime it finds anything on the web for your game, which is both really useful and really creepy at the same time. Because you'll end up finding people complain about bugs that you didn't know about on forums somewhere, and then 10 minutes later you can say, oh, well, have you downloaded the new version? I know at least in one instance we found that some people were trying to get the game to run online, I think, and so they were just having issues because I guess they weren't downloading DirectX update or something along with it, or they had an old version. So finding out where people are complaining and actually addressing them is pretty nice.
I think also the interesting thing being an indie studio is, at least at Lunar Giant, we view every complaint as an opportunity to advertise our game, right? So if I get an alert and somebody's complaining about our game on a forum, and we go and we respond and we fix it, we've had instances where people will come by and say, oh man, that's awesome that you guys are, on our little forum, I'm going to buy your game now. So as a studio, you have the opportunity to directly reach out to the people who are having problems with your game and talk with them and fix their problem, but at the same time, get a bunch of other people in on your game and in on your ideas. So that's a really leg up, I think we have.
On a related note, then, what's a good way to build a community around your game?
Have forums, go on them and interact with people. One thing to do, and I don't know if this would work for anyone else, but it worked for me, is for a while I just released free Flash games on Flash portals, and I had a website, I had forums. When the games became popular, people started coming to the website, they started signing up on the forums, and they would have all these questions. So there are all kinds of things you can do to kind of cultivate forums once you've got people coming to them, right? You can set up areas for people to complain about bugs. You can set up a little wish list area where people can be like,
it would be so cool if you could ride on a dragon and if your character breathed fire and,
Maybe ignore those.
You don't have to actually take all the advice, but the fact that there's an avenue for people who are really enthusiastic about your games to offer you those suggestions. People like that, and that's an incentive for them to stick around your community. And there's a lot of other things you can do too. At one point, I think it was maybe 2 years ago now, I started a wiki for one of my game series, and some of the more obsessive, compulsive members of my forums took to that like flies to honey. They, there's like literally hundreds of entries on this wiki about these free Flash games that they've made. And you know, once you start then producing pay-to-download games, you've got a ready-made community and people who are excited about your games. Just something to think about.
People love free stuff too. You give out free copies of your game or like a free T-shirt in a contest or anything like that. It's a great way to get more people into your community.
You guys did that on Twitter, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah. When our DLC first came out, we gave away like 10 or 15 free copies of our. You know those things where people say, if you retweet this or whatever, you have a chance to get the thing. And when I first thought, I was like, that's corny or whatever. But we got like 50 new followers from doing that, and that was kind of awesome. So, yeah, something to think about.
All right, so it's out there. We're selling it. We have a community. Now, how do we make sure that nobody steals the game idea or the code or the game's clever names or overall the intellectual property? How do we protect it?
A lot of it goes to Kevin's idea of, well, he just said it. The idea of Google Alerts, of just generally seeing what's out there. If someone uses exactly the same name or something similar, then and you find out that's a great way to find out about it. If somebody's on your forums complaining about a bug, and it turns out that they have completely the wrong game, it's probably because, well, either they're an idiot, which is usually true, or in my experience with forums, or maybe somebody has a game with a really similar name. In which case, that's a problem, because if somebody has a game, apparently a very buggy game, and people are mad about it at you, then sure, you had one more hit on your forum, but it was a negative hit, so that can't be all that positive. So if you search those sorts of things, somebody has very different name, but almost exactly the same game. Well, a lot of people can make a jewel game or a bowling game or very basic things. But if your game is more unique and someone comes out with something very similar, you can rightfully get someone with a legal degree to write them a fancy letter telling them to stop, please. And that usually gets them to stop, so you don't have to worry about sinking a bunch of cost into it.
Is a proper response to challenge the company to a quick
informally, yes.
All right.
Yeah, what he was just talking about, the letter, it's called a cease and desist letter. I've had to write a few of those to portals that just decided, because quick background. The game I'm working on right now is a pay-to-download game, but it's in Flash. There were a few Flash portals, which I found through Google Alerts, right, who were offering the game free to play on their website in a browser version. And I wasn't sure if this was good or bad, but it was like a seriously outdated version too. And so I was like, hi, I see you have my game. That's not cool. Please take it down. I don't want to have to sue you. Sincerely me. And they did. Because no one likes being sued.
And from a frank point of view, when you have the YouTube videos, technically speaking, they're infringing your copyright in the game. You made a game, and they are posting it online. You could get them to stop. However, for a YouTube game, it may be of a lot of value to you because they're talking about the game in a way that you can't get internal people to do, or they have thousands of hits where your own trailers have very few. So you can do whatever you want with your intellectual property. In fact, with a lot of things, any publicity is good publicity. However, you have the power. Intellectual property, it's property. It's something that you can keep people from messing with. And you always have the power to say, hey, please stop it, sincerely, some big lawyer.
Except for one thing. which Heather mentioned, which is ideas. You can't stop someone from using an idea. That's never protected.
There are limits.
Plus ideas don't mean anything without implementation. We sent out cease and desist letter too when our game first came out, and then as it went on, we just kind of stopped sending out cease and desist letters because it was a waste of our time to do that versus just getting the game out there. Plus, somebody wants to steal our $5 game. I mean, they're going to do that no matter what. That's their prerogative. So, sometimes you look at those as marketing opportunities and things like that. But achievements are a great way to get people to make sure nobody steals your game, right? Because if you've got achievements built in your game through something like Steam, you're not going to get those achievements when you steal somebody's game. But, that's just...
That's the practical way of doing it. You don't have to worry about any lawyer getting involved. You just make it so that the person doesn't like doing it.
Right. Then there's the converse. I think, George, were we talking about this the other day, where somebody was saying to me they have a free game, but they made it seem like it was a torrent or something like that, so that maybe it wasn't you, but somebody was saying this so that it made them feel like they were stealing the game. And apparently some people get into that, because they think they're getting a game for on the sly to take it. That's just something I heard. Wasn't me.
I think I heard that too. I think that was on Twitter or something.
I would just add
the main part of it on the torrent sites with kind of a sort of a pseudo hacker logo in ASCII pictures and stuff.
And this and that. So how do you guys determine which conferences or conventions to hit, and what's on your scale for I have to hit Indicate, but I'll skip GDC this year, or I have to hit GDC because I need to network with some more press and some more developers and learn some more stuff. So that means Indicate's out. How do you guys determine that, especially if you're not in, like, say, the Bay Area or LA and you're along with all the gaming press and all that stuff?
Well, GDC has several components. I think IGF is held at the same time as GDC. So if you're involved with Independent Games Festival, that's kind of a twofer. I think it depends on your game and what's appropriate. If you're doing lots of Flash games, there's the Flash Game Summit they have every year. There's Casual Connect for casual game developers as well. There's a gentleman named Rob Arnett who has a really cool audio-only game. I forget the name of it.
Synapse?
What's that?
Synapse?
Yeah. He went to South by Southwest, and he's going to Burning Man. So that crowd, in terms of culture for his game is perfect, and he can get connections that way. So it really depends on what you're doing, what you're into, who you want to meet, and what kinds of long-term audience you want to pursue.
All right, and I think you back behind there I think you were next. Yeah, you.
Okay. So I got here kind of late. I don't know if you guys covered contracting with your development team, but what do you recommend for, indie studio, very low budget? There's a bunch of ways to go about it. One step I took was just to write up a contract myself and kind of have a lawyer review it. Is that any other recommendations that you guys?
There are probably three things that you need to make sure you get into that agreement. You need to worry about how you deal with money. That is, money from the get-go if you want to pay for advertising or something, or any sort of expenses, and what you do with the money that comes back in after you sell some games. Control, how you're going to deal with who has the ultimate say in something. It's easy when there's one person, and it's reasonably easy when there's three. You can do majority rules, but what if there's two people? You have to have some sort of split in authority such that you have some way of coming up with the answer. It could be, I do development, you do business, or whatever, but you need some way to deal with it. And then the third one is how you deal with changes to the business, and that's kind of a catch-all for if you want to add another partner, if you want to if one person thinks that it's not working out and really wants to change things, and the other person doesn't, if there's some sort of agreement that where you can't, where it requires either adding someone else, either because things are going well or because you can't interact with each other well enough to, make the last decision on exactly how to go with the last level, how to do whatever. So those three main things you need to make sure you deal with.
Short answer is get a lawyer. You cannot draft a contract on your own because there will be loopholes up the wazoo unless you have a lawyer look it over. Okay. We're trained to be like Chicken Little. We look for every little thing that's could possibly go wrong. And do that.
So
Jeff,
two resources to help you out with that. The IGDA has a casual game sig, and they have on their so it's igda.org/casual, I believe. So they have on their wiki, they actually have a sample NDA and I believe a sample independent contractor agreement or a sample contract. And you can look at stuff like that, and they can give you at least bases for something that other casual game studios or small studios have used in the past. And then Tom Buscaglia, who actually used to be an IGDA board director, he's called the Game Attorney, gameattorney.com, I believe. He has what's called the Game Dev Kit. It's like $250, and it gives you like a lawyerly done NDA, independent contractor agreement, all the basic forms that you may need, and it gets you a discount off his services, which is good because lawyers are expensive. But those two are resources that you can use if you're looking for contracts and you're kind of on a budget or just getting started out and you want, say, just like a mutual NDA just to get you started talking with somebody about what you're doing and how to go from there. So I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah, definitely good starting points. And you, sir?
Well, first off, my name's Hank.
Welcome, Hank.
I can't game. But yeah, I wanted to ask, it's kind of a question inside of a question. What is more of the, I guess, hellish route or easier route when it comes down to like developing indie games? Should you like try and develop first PC and then branch out to going to like make your game for Xbox Live and PSN, or it doesn't matter, just get your game out? And also, is there such thing as making your game too ambitious, so putting too much into it if it's indie?
I can answer the second one in one word.
I don't want it to end up like El Shaddai. Capcom. Oh wait, no, that's DLC. Anyway, go on.
So I was like, oh, I know the answer to this, but then I forgot what the first question was.
Yeah.
Okay. When it comes down to making like indie game, should you just?
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. What we're doing is focus on one thing first. So we're doing PC and sort of kind of Mac PC are kind of over. There's enough overlap that we can do those at the same time. Everyone who I mean, we haven't sold a game yet, but everyone who I talk to is like, I mean, Steam is just so much more. You're going to be so much more successful with that than any sort of console. Anything on a console, like it seems bigger, because it's a higher profile platform, but the sales are not really good.
If you have a successful game on PC, that's really when it becomes a lot easier to put on other platforms, because especially Microsoft is one that won't necessarily talk to you unless you have something pretty much ready to publish.
All right. You with the yellow hat there.
Okay, great, thanks. I know we talked briefly about what kind of business structure to have. I'm just wondering if the panelists can share what business structure they chose, LLC or C Corp, S Corp, and what states they're registered in, and if they want to say why, you can or you can't. I'm just curious to get an excellent question.
We're an S Corp. So I, from what I understand, and I could be totally wrong, but LLCs in Illinois are not very cost effective from what I understand.
They cost $500 as opposed to $125, I think it is.
$125, and S corps give you really nice tax status, cash flow.
The only downside, and I can't help myself, sorry. The only downside is that with an S corp, you have to determine exactly how the shares will be distributed, and that's set in stone. You can't mess with it afterwards. With an LLC, you can. With a partnership, you can.
Yeah, I'm happy with the S corp.
I mean, and can I just ask, with the tax status, you have to pay taxes. I mean, in terms of like dividends per share. I mean, like the profits per share coming in, or is it like taxes on total corporate income? Or?
So I think that's how that depends on how you set up payments.
Okay, maybe we talk after.
Yeah,
that's
really
specific.
The gist is, yes, you have to pay taxes. You have to pay taxes, partially at the corporate level, partially at the individual level, and let's talk later.
Okay, that's something.
How did you set up?
I've listened to lawyers enough that like I'm not sure which corp it is. I'm pretty sure that's yeah. Largely because of the complicated way of doing that sort of vested share splitting based on we're doing it very like the number of hours you work in each 3-month period determines how things get split up. So that was just easier to do that way.
For me, it's doubly complicated because I have people all over the world, and so international law comes into play. The easiest thing for me right now is sole proprietor. I just document personal income. Our teams come to agreement that I'm going to be in control of all the property. So I just basically deduct the expenses. I pay them out based on percentage agreements that we've had ahead of time and the experience we've had based on who's been doing the most work. So having the benefit of these small games, I get to see, well, the programmer is putting the most time in, so let's give her X percentage. I get X percentage goes with the company. So for me, that's the easiest way to deal with it. And for Chicago, it's like $250 to do a business license, sole proprietorship at no cost. It's just personal income. However, the risk is at my expense. So if for whatever reason we have a publishing deal gone awry, that comes back to me. So I'm extra careful when I ever engage in any kind of business outside of my own and my immediate payments. But for now, the finances aren't so great that I would need that kind of extra protection. I don't have any money to give them anyway.
Anyone else want to share on the panel?
I'm also a sole proprietorship. It costs $0, and the financial stakes aren't high enough right now.
All right. And I think I had this guy with the hat next. Yep.
So we've seen LA Noire have the season pass, and Gears of War is they're gonna release their subscription-based DLC model. Just want to get your thoughts on doing subscription-based DLC, since everyone's doing DLC, and there seems to be certain positives and negatives for doing subscription-based. So I know you spoke of DLC a little bit. And, have you guys thought of doing subscription-based DLC yet, or anything like that?
For our scale right now, it's probably a bit more complicated than it would be worth it. What are they? How does this work?
It's you put up like $30.
Yeah.
This is the way Epic's doing it with Gears of War 3, I guess.
Yeah.
You're doing $30, and you get all the DLC from when the game's released through next, February or something like that. And Age of Empires Online just released recently, and they're doing something similar. You buy the $120 pack, you get all their DLC released, which is supposed to include so many, civilizations and all the way through a certain time period. And with Rockstar, they did the season pass with LA Noire, and they only did it where you had a temporary amount of time to buy the season pass. And so by the time I know a lot of people that didn't finish the game, and so they missed their opportunity to buy the season pass, and so now it's a kind of a barrier. They're like, well, I know they would sell the DLC cheaper, so they don't want to buy it. And then, but Gears of War, the way that they're doing it, it seems like, oh, you beat the game, you want the DLC, you can put up $30 whenever you want, and then make sure you get all the content instead of buying like 5 map packs
Well, we're
from
considering
Black Ops, you know.
it
seems really good in a way for the developer because you can get a lot more money up front to put into it, but then, you know.
So what do you guys think about that then?
Well, they have it for the iTunes too. iTunes has done a subscription-based model for a lot of places. Like newspapers that have gone digital, obviously that's a perfect model for them. And I don't know too many developers have done it yet. I can't imagine if you're not releasing content constantly, it'll work well for you. But I imagine a lot of AAA studios now are bridging over to mobile, which is now becoming problematic. You've seen it in the last couple of years, slowly creeping. All the big names, Zynga especially, down there. So I can see them doing that. If you're doing 1 title, 2 titles a year on that model, or 3, however many you do, that's been the frequency with which you release your material.
I think the question is a smaller subset of bundling in general, because that's essentially what you're talking about is bundling of DLCs and selling it before they come out. You can do bundling in terms of buy such and such DLC for our one game and get our old game for free, or buy our old game for an extra $1 or something. Or you can do it where you where if you want to partner with someone else who makes similar games, you can buy ours and get theirs for half price. Just generally those sorts of bundling ideas can work really well.
Has any of you guys done pay what you want models similar to Indie Bundle or Mojang's, Minecraft, those kinds of things?
Well, we did Kickstarter, which in a sense is selling a game that doesn't quite exist yet. And I think a lot of, well, at least with Minecraft, there's a lot of success in selling a game based on a promise that it will get better. I mean, a lot of gamers like to see their investment continue to grow and be able to get it at a cheap price. So having a game, I don't know how it will work out for other games, but it worked out with Minecraft well that if you buy it this early, it'll be this price, and they're going to warn you that it'll go up in price. Not every game can probably pull that off. Having like a Kickstarter and say, you get the free bonus levels if you pre-order, or having like an early adopter sale on Steam right when you release, like 20% off the game or something, just to give the original people kind of the confidence that you'll continue to add new features for free. And so that's one possible way to have that come out.
Well, one other thing I'd like to add answers your question you said earlier about going too far in development. The Dream Machines, anybody play that game? Swedish developers. Yep. They have another similar model to Kickstarter, kind of, where you can pay per episode, and there are going to be 5, they say, or you pay for them all up front, and then it's cheaper on the back end. So they release episodes periodically, and when I purchased it, there were 2 out. That was back last year, and the 3rd one has not yet come out yet. There was an article recently by the developers. There are only 2 of them, and it's like claymation, handcrafted art, so it takes a long time. And they were saying, okay, I think we might go over our heads. We're going to keep going, but it might be a good idea to not do too much up front. It's okay to release small games at a time. So, but that's another model to consider. The indie thing is totally up to you how you want to do it, as long as you can support it. And that's really the thing with Kickstarter. It's a promise with the community that you're going to fulfill the project at some point.
Definitely. Now, you, sir, have been very patient.
Oh, that's right. I guess 2 questions. The first being, when do you think about this stuff? I mean, let's say you're working on a first project. You aren't quite sure if it's going to make it past alpha, let alone finish. So when do you start thinking about, when should I incorporate, what kind of structure should I work out? Like, at what point in that first project's development do you start to ask yourself some of these questions?
Are you working with anyone else?
One project, yes. Another project, just more personal.
Talk with them.
Yeah.
That's it. Just say, what are we going to do about money and control and adding people?
And this is somewhat in the same vein, too, is if you are setting up a corporation, you obviously have to pay yourself a appropriately. So, I mean, how do you go about doing that, or is that another talk to a lawyer type question?
You talk to me or you talk to an accountant.
Okay.
All right. And you, sir.
This is kind of a two-point part. You guys have been, the first part is you guys have been talking about 7 different models for distribution, freemium and so on and so forth, bundling sort of constructs. How are you managing the actual enforcement of those models? Is number one. And number two comes with regards to Kickstarter. In the Kickstarter case, what's to enforce that that project actually comes about?
Well, in the case of Kickstarter, if you don't fulfill your goals, they can actually take legal action against you.
Okay.
So we're pretty much legally binded to make something for them. With Kickstarter, a lot of it was built in as like prizes, so T-shirts or stuff that we can easily produce. With the game, we didn't necessarily make any hard guarantees, like this will be so many hours long or anything. We left that pretty vague, especially just to protect ourselves. So we have to be careful to not just ask for money based on a promise, and
don't promise the world.
Yes, don't promise the world.
Every relationship we enter, we do a contract for. We were involved in a bundle. We had a contract. Every platform for distribution network we're on, we have a contract. I don't think we've ever done any business with anybody without a contract. So that's our enforcement. And everybody's given any problems yet. But
It wasn't necessarily the enforcement so much as the actual management of the process. So like a Steam, like iTunes, App Store manages for you. But when you're talking bundling and things along those lines, is there a system you guys use, or is that something that you have to find like accountants to deal with? Like what's the actual process with you?
So for the bundle that we were part of, we went through a vendor called FastSpring. We didn't run the bundle, but from what I understand, the guy who did wasn't very pleased with what they did. But there are other services similar to FastSpring out there that will manage payments, and I think FastSpring had their own payment gateway process set up, so you can use PayPal or Google Checkout or Amazon Payments or whatever else to do.
I think what you want is you want someone besides you two to be doing it for you, because when bigger companies are doing it, you can have something like you need to send us all of your information and you need to send it to us every quarter and it needs to be audited, and you can throw a whole bunch of things like that at it, but it just increases the price. It's a lot easier to go to somebody else and say, okay, and they'll give you the money via PayPal. And what you do is on each of your websites, whoever you're bundling with, whoever your partner is, each of you just link to whoever that is, and they handle all of the sales and the money gets filtered back.
How would you go about finding one that you know is for certain legit?
Like payment gateway?
Well, just a whole, just with regards to FastSpring or whatever.
BMT Micro and Plymouth are the two most popular ones. They're both really good.
What were they?
BMT Micro, two words, and Plymouth, Plimus. Those are the two most popular ones. I personally use BMT Micro. They're very reliable. They take a reasonable cut. They have really good analytics, and they keep a database of everyone who's ever purchased the game. If anyone ever loses their activation code, I can easily go and just have BMT Micro resend them the email with the download link and the activation code. They actually don't talk about this on their website, but I spoke to one of the people who helps run the site, and they can also do they can set up pay what you want sales and stuff for you as well. They've got an affiliate network. You can customize what percentage take your affiliates get when they sell your games through their own portals. There's a million different automated services that you get when you use sites like that, and it's absolutely worth it.
We also, our site's a WordPress blog, and there's this plugin called WP E-commerce, and we sell our game on our site through that plugin integrated with PayPal standard, right? But you could also integrate it with payment gateways like Authorize.net things like that. Just make, and this goes to I think what Kyle was saying too. You don't want to house anybody's data on your website, so make sure it's elsewhere when you're doing any of those transactions.
Yes, back there.
I know most of you guys personally, like some way or another. So, well, that just lets you know that I've talked to a lot of you before about the way your business is going and stuff like that. So, I've got a couple questions I can ask, but I'm going to go with one right now. So, most of you guys are actually making like computer games and stuff like that. How does that hardcore audience on the computer side translate to possibly doing something on the iPhone or a mobile side, since that audience is more of a casual side, whereas with your hardcore gamer, that's where the Kickstarter and stuff like that really come into play. Especially like the Young Horses guys, they put out an app, or an actual, mobile. So they put out a game prior, and now they're like, okay, I want to do this other app game. I can't help it. So that type of audience doesn't work with my genre, with mobile and stuff like that. In mobile, it's like, okay, I'm going to put this out, see what happens. If I make some money, I make some money. Whereas with the Kickstarter and the hardcore guys, you got people, an audience that actually want something to do with your lifestyle. And pretty much it makes you guys elevated up to the level of a rock star. That's why a lot of people want to get into the game industry. Like, I can't play an instrument. I want to be a rock star. And it really comes down to that point. You know, I've talked with Jay about it a couple of times, and his audience is just something completely that I don't understand. So if you guys can get literal about that, iterate on it.
I mean, I'm just thinking about being a rock star now.
Is that because you don't have any other talents?
I mean, that is actually what I do all day.
Let's keep the heckling to minimum.
Johnson's the only name tag that I can read from.
You tried. I give up.
Well, I think for right now, we're just trying to find the audience that really likes the game currently, as well as just making a game that we like. Because I think one thing we don't want to get too much into is trying to develop for too big of an audience that we don't even know, or just kind of not concentrating on what we really find enjoyable. So I think at least letting it get successful from the first audience and then branching out is something that I hope will end up working for us.
Possible iPad port, still possible, according to Petra.
Yeah. Well, one thing, I mean, I personally haven't done it, but one thing I would think of that would be relevant to that is just what kind of game is it? Like, certain games are pretty hardcore and they appeal to a PC audience, but they also lend themselves really well to being played on a mobile device, like Desktop Dungeons, right? That's a game that can be played in short bursts. It's very much lends itself to a touch screen interface, but at the same time it's also really complex, and it gained a lot of popularity on the PC. I would imagine like games that kind of have that sort of synergy going on between those two want to kind of harness into an iPhone board.
So there's a question about, is it got a first PC game and now you're making a second one on mobile, or is it about taking that first PC game and shifting it over to
You
mobile
should know me.
platform?
There's another question I'm about to ask once I get your answers.
So, but is that which was it?
It's a trap.
Longer than I'll answer it. But was it?
No, it was.
First phrase it. So I would say we view our games as an independent studio, especially as an extension of our company's personality. So every game we make is, we make it for ourselves, and then hopefully people buy it, and you make it for other people as well, obviously, but you mostly make it as an extension of yourself. So I think any other game we make will also be an extension of our personalities, and I think the people who buy our games aren't just buying, they're buying the kind of direction we go in with our games, no matter what platform they're on. I think they'll always be a little bit Lunar Giant in it,
Very nice. Now, I'm going to start down here.
I was like paying attention.
Oh, beat the troll!
Did you have a second? Oh, I definitely have a second question.
I'm going to come back around to you, just to be fair. Okay. You start with the hat.
Basically, earlier there's a mention of in-game advertisements, and yeah, but like basically, at least in my perception, in-game advertisements are usually met with a lot of hostility, and basically I want to just ask the viability of that for the future on what platforms and how financially stable is that model.
We go with the table.
Talk to those guys right back there. Having games about that.
That's our living now. Don't talk to
Yeah,
me.
but that's. I think you know, like for instance, what they're doing is really exciting because it's not annoying in-game advertising. It's kind of unobtrusive. So.
Let me edit my answer before Jerry gets mad. The kind of advertising I used to do in games was flash game advertising, which is like you get CPM star or mochi ads or some automated service to display a little ad while your game loads, and that used to be kind of viable for some income, and around like September 2008 when the economy tanked, so did CPM. Like you will not make really any money using ads like that now, even with a really popular free game. Like you would just have to have millions and millions of impressions. What Happy Games is doing, as I understand it, is very different. They're specifically going after much more targeted, well-integrated advertising where they can make much more money per impression. That's the impression I get.
You can integrate the ad in a better way than just a billboard. Then you're really going to have the player really emotionally attached to that ad. For instance, a lot of people probably remember like Cool Spot or McKids or Burger King games, and they really enjoyed them.
Cool Spot was fun. The rest was fun. Go on.
Well, I mean, those kind of games work better on like a memorable level. As far as you probably don't remember like all the billboards and FIFA or whatever.
What was the Noid for?
Dominoes.
Yes, I hate dominoes.
Exactly.
All right, now I want to make sure we get through all the questions here. So there's somebody else down in front.
This guy.
Yeah, you sir. You have a question.
Hero.
Yes.
Hello. So I actually have a question about like sponsorship. So like when you want to like have a company like help market your game. So let's say like I contact a company like Empire Arcadia, which specializes in fighting game arena. So like how exactly would you have to deal with them? Like do we split profit or do they have to like meet a certain deadline? Something like that.
I think it depends on what your game is and how big it is, what they see potential in it. You can go through a couple different ways. You can deal directly with the company that you know is going to pick up your game or pick up games similar to yours, or you can do flash game license. If we're talking about flash game licenses, there are typically three kinds of licensing. There's primary license, which is the most common now, where they get the chance to get your game out first through their distribution channels. They pay you a fee up front, and then either you can sell single lock licenses to other places, so they only can put one copy on your site, or there's a waiting period before you can distribute around. So that's one way. There's exclusive, which means they get all rights to license it, or you can do a buyout, which is another one, which is probably a little more risky because they get to take everything and own it. Typically, if you want to retain your IP, you would choose one of the two formers. So the flash game license, there are some things that you can do with that as well. You want to be careful. The best thing to do is put it there first. You're not required to take any deals that are there. And if you get one that's not bad, then you go for it. Otherwise, you can just pull it right off and go directly somewhere else with it. There's a lot of flexibility. The more difficult thing is to license it first, then put on a flash game license, because typically you can only put it in what they call the game shop, which is probably a single site lock license. And they allow you to customize too what we're willing to add into the game. Like specific site achievements, if you can swing that additional APIs that are based on their site, those kinds of things. Yeah, so there's a great profile of this, of the game Steambirds by Daniel Cook. That's exactly his experience. He got a really good offer, and the game is very big as well. It's a bigger actual game license. And he pretty much profiles out all the offers he had, the bidding war that was there, and what he went with, and why he went with it, and the kinds of deals he got. Because there can be some very interesting deals, ad revenue, in addition to the license up front. So
that'd be a good thing to look into then. Now I want to make sure we get through the rest of the couple of questions throughout over this region. You, sir.
I was just wondering, I have a general question. What sort of things happened in your experiences that really sort of burned you, and you, looking back on it, would say, I learned so much from having that problem? What sort of pitfalls have you guys had that taught you something that you say, okay, I'm never going to have a problem quite like that again?
And there's a cricket chirping somewhere.
We didn't set schedules for our game when we first started developing it, and that led to some people. Setting a development schedule is imperative, and I think we've learned from that, and we've come out a lot better from just making sure we're constantly iterating, that we know what everybody's doing at any given time. I think that's something we started off a little after the
You mentioned creative direction. Having somebody who's a creative director.
Oh, yeah, right. Yeah, having one vision, right, for your game. So having a creative director, somebody who maintain, as you start developing a game, you get into things like future blow, where everybody's like, oh, this would be a good idea, and this, the fire-breathing dragons or whatever we're talking about, all that sort of stuff. If you have a creative director that keeps everybody on track, they're not necessarily always right, maybe, but they have a vision, and if it's a singular vision, that comes through a lot stronger in a game than a bunch of different ideas thrown together.
George Lucas.
Absolutely.
Well,
am I missing anybody over here? Was anybody? No. And I saw you. Yes.
I have a question about donations. How do donations fare as a revenue stream? And what are some factors that affect the amount of donations you may receive?
Donations, from what I understand, very seldom work. Arn Adams is a happy exception with Dwarf Fortress. He's done well with it. I can't really think of anyone else who has.
I made $15. Yeah, I made $15 off of our donation.
Now you can go to McDonald's for exactly $2.
All right, last.
Sell just yet, then a good way to get extra money or for people to kind of donate in a way is to sell some kind of merchandise. So if you can sell T-shirts, most people probably don't want to spend more than $12 on a T-shirt, but if you sell for $25 as part of like a donation, then in a sense they're getting something and helping donate at the same time.
All right, I think we have time for like 2 more questions. Is there anyone?
The guy with the cool white hat.
You there, Ryan?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So let's pretend I have a game, and then it has logins and whatnot, and I don't know how computers work, and then I kill my programmer. What of these is required of me at that point? I have a login. What's a server? I don't know what that is. How do I do security? Is that a thing? Is there a service that does this? What am I doing? I need help. Like if I have like logins and whatnot, I assume on some sort of database stored on a server something. What? I don't know. What am I even saying?
If you have no technical know-how, how would you go about getting something like that working and being able to rely on someone to do it?
For like a website or
for my game?
To sell your game.
Yeah, I made a game before I kill my programmer.
So,
find another program.
Or I would think
Find another programmer.
No, you know what? Like I was saying before, one of the ways we sell our game is through, we get some sales from it, but not a lot. But if you're looking to sell and distribute online, one of the ways we sell our game is we run a WordPress blog for our main site. And there's a plugin called WP e-commerce. You install it, and you have a shop on your website now. You can then load your game into that shop and add a payment gateway, like PayPal, authorize that, Google Cards or whatever, or whatever. And you get an API key from them. You plug it straight into the plugin. There's a very nice graphical user interface that you can use. And then you can just start selling your games.
So, but like username and login, like Minecraft front end, does that handle that as well?
So what it does is no, it doesn't. It doesn't give you username.
That's the part I'm asking about.
Okay. Yeah, you might need to find a service specifically for that, or a specialist.
Or get a sword, lose your mind, and slice everything up.
Right.
I wouldn't recommend that.
If you're looking just to sell a copy, just the copies of the game, it'll generate what I'm talking about will generate a unique link that lasts only for a certain amount of time. But it doesn't sound like that's.
All right, so I think I have the 2 remaining questions of the night in this corner. You, sir, and then you.
Yes.
Okay. Is anyone doing mobile? Okay. So, how do you go about choosing between going with the iPhone or going with Android? Whereas, like, the market's massively fluctuating. Look at how much ground Android's covered in phones in the past 2 years, and they've kind of just really started focusing on the tablet market. We could see that fluctuate, and obviously Apple runs their stuff differently from Google. How do you choose as a developer to do one or the other or do both?
Yeah, that's fine. So we looked into doing Android, but there are 2 problems with going with Android. First of all, iPhone users, I think it's 5 times the amount of iPhone users over Android users pay for apps.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, when you develop for Android, you're not developing for one device. You're developing for tons of devices with different hardware, different resolutions.
API levels.
Right, yeah. So we went with Apple just because we're a small development team. We're looking for a quick turnaround, and Apple or iPhone and iOS is a larger market for purchasing games with less hoops to jump through as far as developing the game.
Okay.
And there are some publishers, like you, there are probably some publishers, if you decide to go that route, that could front load the cost support. Of course, they'll take a bigger chunk on the back end, but if that's part of your agreement, is say if we meet X goal, we'll go ahead and port it over. That could take care of that problem for you as well.
Okay. Also, if when you're creating a game, you choose technology or platform that would easily port between the different OSs, that will leave you in a much better position. Because I think Angry Birds would probably be slightly less successful if they weren't able to just plaster it all over every device that exists.
Flash and Unity. Those are the 2. Those really good.
And David Edery from SpryFox on the SpryFox blog, or at least Edery.org, did a whole blog post because they released like Steam Birds and stuff like that on both Android and iOS, and detailed the differences between trying to get something through the App Store, talking about Android fragmentation, talking about doing an update and how quick it was to get an update released on Android versus Apple and all that stuff. So I would check that out too, and that's spryfox.com.
Yep. Dan Cook's blog, good place to go. All right, last question of the night.
This is perfect.
Oh, goodness.
The dip blow. Yeah, so I apologize for being tardy, and I missed probably half of what's going on. But what makes you guys want to continue to be indie? Like, a lot of you say, I want to develop games for me. I don't care who my audience is. My audience will come. Like, I've been a musician for 15 years, and I'm like, I'll get in bands and they're like, we're going to make music for us. No, people come to see you perform for them. Like, when do you feel like that might change for you, when you're going to start making games for what your audience wants?
Well, that's the thing, right? You've got to find the audience that likes the games you want to make. There are a million different niche audiences that the big publishers haven't captured and frankly refuse to go after. I mean, you don't even have to look at the whole expanse of games. as such to even see that. Like, let's just look at RPGs for a second. Just look at RPGs. All they're putting out now are action RPGs. It's all sort of melding into this one crazy chimera, this hybrid genre, RPG, shooter, over-the-shoulder, action. It's all one thing. People who like different kinds of RPGs get left behind. And that's where we can come in. There's niches, right? There is room for Jeff Vogel to go and develop old-school, turn-based, party-based, dialogue tree, having tactical combat, having RPGs. And he makes a very nice income at it. That, to me, is my motivation for remaining indie. I get to make the strange, quirky games that the big studios won't dare to tread near because they're too bloated with overhead and personnel costs to shoulder the costs of developing that sort of game and make it back in a way that we can because we're so much smaller and more nimble.
Good answer, but
Yeah.
how does the rest of you feel about that?
I mean, we don't have to worry about it because everybody will watch
I think two things. You know, first of all, I don't like wearing pants when I go to work, so that's one of the reasons. That's not really an answer.
You can prove you're wearing pants now.
I'm wearing pants now. So, really though, and I don't know if I speak for everyone here, but the sense I get when I talk to other independent developers is that they feel like they've got a better idea and they're smarter than a lot of the bigger, publishers out there, and they can do a better job at it. And I feel like I can do a better job and I don't want anybody else to tell me how to make my game or how to do what I want to do. I want to do it. And so that's why I prefer to stay indie, because I think I'm smarter than everybody.
I have a serious answer now. I really like your answer was kind of similar. I'm not wearing pants either. I really like my team. I like work with who I want to work with and not with people who I don't want to work with.
It's definitely the creative freedom and be able to work with people you like to work with. Other people will go off to different studios and they'll end up being shuffled around sometimes, working on games that they don't necessarily want to make or with people they don't necessarily like. And so being indie, you're able to keep that smaller and kind of develop your own culture around the people you want to work with and making the games you want to make.
I have a kind of a nuanced answer, if I can. I came from a completely different field, traditional music, education, no business background or anything, and so what Jared's talking about is kind of, I don't think you necessarily have to sacrifice not throw the baby out the bathwater to find that audience. It just depends on what you're willing, what's important to you for that game. If as soon as you admit that you're going out there, you're in a business and you're in the field of business and you have to make business decisions. And the time and investment you put in these games, if you don't have an income from somewhere and you don't mind living in a box or anything, it's all up to you. But I think, our group has learned a lot of hard lessons. There's a lot of reality out there when you finally get into it. Our goal is to eventually fund ourselves, but to get there, there are a lot of steps. And I talked about this today a little bit. We've had some experience with the iPhone market and a publisher working with them. And the decision to go to that publisher was not one I took lightly. I did a lot of research. I looked at the trends in the Apple Store. I looked at the top 25. I counted how many were actually indie. There were probably 5 out of 25. And of those 5, what are their histories? How many games did they put out before that? What kind of money do they have on hand? And eventually, you'll see that there is sort of a infrastructure that those companies have built up from smart long-term business decisions. I think if you want to stay indie, that's totally cool. I think, though, that there are some niches that you can find business-wise that can help build up those businesses. So, I looked at Tiny Birds, which is a great game in terms of the implementation. It is built on another model. There are other games like Tiny Birds, and but that's kind of an outlying group of people. Rovio, of course, they went with Chilingo to help produce their game. But every subsequent add-on after that was Rovio by themselves, and now they're $1.2 billion. That's how big their company is now. They're a multimedia company now. I'm not saying I want to go that route, but $1.2 billion is a lot of dollars to get so you have to look at what it takes to get to that point. And I think, all things we talked about, working with other developers, working with groups like Jared, is it the right stuff for your group? These things take serious considerations, and I think that in the long term you need to make smart decisions and what kind of games you want to do, what can you do with those games? Are you thinking more than just one game? Then yes, you're doing a business. And so you have to think about what's smart and safe in some capacity, where you're willing to risk things, where you're willing to let go. Because as you develop games, things are going to change inevitably between the group itself and obviously when it gets out there. So it's a long answer, but there you go.
Definitely. Thank you, George, and thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you all for coming out tonight.